Okay, thank you, Marlova. And thank you, Susan, for setting the tone of this discussion and being so praiseful for the teachers. Dear participants, it is very clear from this conference that education is a necessary condition for eliminating child labor. I will not dwell further on that because there seems to be a broad consensus on that. As Susan has said, we need quality, public, relevant, inclusive, compulsory, adequately resourced education. Listening to the speeches at this conference, what we feel as teacher representatives is that there is a missing element, and the missing element is the teachers. It's all fine to be talking about what education should be, but who delivers the education if not the teachers? So as Susan said, that children need to be at the center of program and policies design, we believe in Education International that teachers also should be at the center of the design of those policies. And to quote you again, you said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. In teacher unions, we often have the impression that a lot is being said about how teachers work, what they do in the classroom, how much they cost. However, their views are very little listened to. And if we could make a call to this conference, it would be that teachers are on board and that through their representative independent organizations, they are involved in the policies about education. Teachers are generally undervalued. They're underpaid, they're poorly trained. In the past, being a teacher gave you a status. In many countries, it is no longer the case. Teachers are no longer respected as they should be. A recent UNESCO report has talked about the teacher shortage. If states want to achieve the Education for All Millennium Goals, at least 1.6 million teachers should be recruited. In order for young people to be willing to engage in the teaching profession, this profession needs to be revalued. Otherwise, it will not be considered as a possible job opportunity, unless you believe so much in the value of education that you are prepared to engage in a profession where you will not be remunerated adequately. We have a number of teacher union representatives on our delegation, and if you want, you can talk to them later about their working conditions in Haiti, in Uganda, in Albania, in Mali. Talk to them about how much they make every month and whether that is enough to lead a decent life, not only for yourself, but for your family and for your extended family. Being a teacher is really not a good career opportunity these days, unfortunately. Education International was presented as an NGO. We are not exactly an NGO. This is the status we have in UN agencies, but in fact we are a workers' organization. We are a global federation of teacher unions. Education International is based in Brussels. We have over 400 teacher unions in 172 countries. We used to say that we speak in the name of 30 million teachers. I said 172 countries. There are a number of gaps. Education International has no member in China because teachers' unions are not independent in China, and we have no members in Gulf states because trade unions are forbidden in those countries. But in all other countries, EI has member organizations. Since the inception of Education International, the fight against child labor has been very high on the agenda. We are carrying out programs with donor funding to raise the awareness of teacher unions about the need to engage in the fight against child labor, about the need for unions to adopt policies, to adopt programs, to train, to give capacity building to the teachers about welcoming children that have been released from child labor, about implementing a child-centered learning process, inclusive, taking into account the special needs of those marginalized children. As Susan said, teachers are very well placed to identify the children that could possibly drop out. They go and talk to the families, they convince the communities about the importance of education. These programs, we carry them out with our teacher unions, I said in about 25 countries. Every year we extend the number of countries that we target. However, in theory, these programs should be institutionalized. They should be organized by the state. Teacher unions fill a gap, but really the states should be doing that. What kind of quality education are we talking about? In Education International, we believe there are three important components: quality teachers, quality tools, and quality environment. Regarding the quality teaching, we feel that you cannot be trained in a few weeks to be able to sit in front of a classroom. Sometimes there are 80 pupils in the classroom, sometimes more, up to 140 in some countries. The pupils have different ages. There again, Susan mentioned it. In some classrooms, you have children age 6 and other age 15. They're in the same classroom. They don't need the same approach. Teachers need to learn about gender-sensitive approach. This is a very important element as well. They need to be sensitized to addressing those marginalized groups that are in the classroom. Teachers are considered as role models. So we believe that there should be as many male as female teachers, that they should also sometimes be representatives of the communities they teach to, but that they should be trained, not only in the skills that they impart to children, but also in the pedagogy that need to be implemented in the classroom. And from that point of view, there is a very interesting program in Nicaragua where a number of teachers are former child laborers, so they're particularly sensitized to the problem that child laborers have encountered in their early life, and they are particularly well placed to bring the children to the school and to the learning process. I would also like to touch briefly on the supportive learning environment, also for teachers, the importance of education support personnel, of classroom assistants, of librarians, of care workers, nurses, psychologists, nutritionists. This is part of the education community that help the child through the learning process. The quality tools. The school building is important. The classroom should be well equipped. I talked about class size earlier. In a number of countries, the school can take place under a tree or in a dilapidated building, very hot, sometimes humid, with leaking roofs. These conditions need to be addressed. Quality tool is also the curriculum. The curriculum needs to be inclusive. It needs to be relevant for the communities. It should go beyond literacy and numeracy. We believe strongly in the need for curriculum to unlock the potential of children. I've been attending some sessions yesterday on agriculture, and it gave me the feeling that in rural schools, basically children should learn about being better at their work in agriculture, and that there was not much more prospect offered to them. If we want countries to develop, children need to unlock their potential. They need to think further than what they are used to. They need to have a lot of ambition for themselves, for their communities, for their country. The language of instruction is also important. Education International has no policy on the language of instruction, but we believe that local language, early instruction in early language, is a step towards formal education. The school time, we believe, can also be adapted to harvesting season, for example, as long as the education that will be provided is as close as possible as the formal education that other children receive in urban areas. Regarding transitional programs to help children released from child labor to enter into formal education, we believe that these programs should be designed with and by the communities and the target groups, but that there needs to be also a transition to more formal education. It's also an equity issue. All children should be receiving the same type of education, ultimately. But there might be a differentiated approach in the beginning. Finally, I'd like to say a few words about the learning environment. Susan touched on the safe schools. We believe that safe schools starts from the way to school. In some countries it can be very dangerous. Children have sometimes to walk for 1 hour, sometimes more, sometimes in the dark. It can be very dangerous for boys and girls alike. Some schools are in natural disaster areas. Some schools are in war zones. These are elements that need to be worked upon. Susan talked about the need for respect. All children deserve the same kind of respect. Corporal punishment, intimidation, humiliation, this should be part of the past. This is not acceptable in nowadays schools. And teacher unions work on strategies to combat all forms of violence and discrimination. Talking about rural schools, the safety aspect is also related to the pesticides. Finally, it is also important for schools to guarantee access to all children, including disabled children. I'd like to share with you a number of initiatives that have been taken by teacher unionists to improve the quality of education. In Latin America, there is a very interesting teacher union initiative called the Pedagogical Movement. The idea is that through school, profound social change can be brought upon. And teacher unions should therefore be associated with all the policies regarding education, regarding teacher conditions, teacher training. In a number of countries, the teacher unions are advocating to increase the compulsory school age, to make sure that education is obligatory until 16, 18 years old. These initiatives have been taken by teacher unions in Senegal, in Argentina, for example. In some countries, teacher unions insist with education authorities that school supplies be provided, that every child would have his own textbook, that the schools would be properly equipped. In Ghana, the teacher unions has branches in all the local communities. And very regularly they go and take a look at the schools and make a list of what needs to be done. If a roof is leaking, if there is inadequate education facilities, not enough blackboards, whatever. And they provide the list to the education authorities, and they make sure that the repairs are being done, that the supplies are being delivered. In Burkina Faso, Teacher Union initiated an interesting project whereby they provide children living far away from school with bicycles. It may seem very simple, but it can change the life of the children, and some may not drop out because the way to school can be done in 10 minutes versus 1 hour. In a number of countries like Jamaica, Uganda, the teacher unions have implemented plans to provide meals in school. It is very difficult to learn with an empty stomach. In Uganda, the teacher unions has organized with the Parents Association for the parents to come together, bring the food that they have grown in their house or provide some money and prepare the meals together so that also children whose parents cannot pay for a meal in school will be fed. In Jamaica, the teacher union found out that if school attendance is quite good at the beginning of the week, towards Thursday, Friday, children are not turning to school anymore because they need to help out their parents. So they've decided to put on the Friday menu a meal that children particularly like, chicken. And parents appreciate that. It may be the only time in the week that their child will eat meat, so they're more inclined to send the children to school from Monday to Friday. In Morocco, the teachers have found out that some children were dropping out of school simply because they had eyesight problems. So they developed a project whereby the union was able to equip the children with glasses. Teacher unions are also demanding appropriate teacher training. And they make demands to the government about what the contents of the training should be, about what should be addressed in in-service training and in continuous training. However, in many countries, teachers and teacher organizations are not listened to. So that would be my conclusion. Teacher unions are at the forefront of the fight for the elimination of child labor. They partner with other organizations, other civil society organizations, with NGOs, with ministries, with UN agencies through the ILO IPEC program, for example, with Parents Association. Eliminating child labor cannot be done by one single group. So teacher organizations need to be supported in their endeavor to challenge child labor. I've got 3 more minutes, but I'm almost done. Make no mistake, the overall responsibility lies with the state. Teacher unions take initiatives. However, teachers, at the end of the day, are not the sole responsible for keeping children in school. This is a state responsibility. Teachers and teacher organizations can help, can be innovative, can provide ideas about how to improve the quality of education, but they need to be well-resourced and they need to be supportive. I think I can stop there and wait for questions to further develop some of the thinking.